Here we are ready for the finishing steps. We knitted both socks and now we need to make them neat on the inside so that there are no loose tails. This was the one we used for measuring. Here we just cut it off and pull it out. That's all we need to do for that one. Let's do that first thing on both socks. And now I will put one sock to the side and we will work on this one. Okay, the first very obvious thing is here the cuff. Remember how we left this little gap? So we are now going to use a yarn needle, thread the tail into it, and we're going to look here and see this is the stitch here, and then we find, see how we have a very neat edge and then it drops. This is where we need to create that stitch in the same shape. So we are going to see how here we have behind, in front, behind. So we come through here and we come back through here to make it look like a knitted stitch. See how now it all looks the same? Okay, now we're going to go back from the side and make sure it looks neat on the side as well. We're going to follow the shape of the stitches . You're just following the path the yarn took before over these stitches here, closing the gap. Then we come on the inside and we want to weave in, following the shape of the stitches here. It's almost like knitting over your stitches with a sewing needle. Some people like to make a knot. You don't necessarily need a knot, especially if you're using pure wool yarn. After a couple of hand washes with soap, you can felt these in and they're going to be nicely secured. So you can weave in for at least 4 or 5 stitches, sewing over them in the same shape. And then when you are washing your sock, remember with pure wool, it is really best to hand wash with soap and flat dry, because pure wool will definitely tend to felt. Then you can just use soap and water here and felt this in. If you're not using pure wool, then you will definitely want to tie these knots. Okay, turning our sock inside out, let's hope we did a neat job here on our color work. We see our progress in learning to do color work from the inside more than from the outside. There are no long loops, nothing strange looking. You're making really nice progress. Also here, if you're using pure wool yarn, you will be able to use soap and warm water to felt this in so that it's even more flat and uniform on the inside. Okay, now we go to these tails here. See how there's a little gap? We want to make sure we don't have that gap. We first pull on the tails and we watch where they have gone. Yes, you can tie a knot, but it's going to be much nicer to wear a sock that doesn't have little knots. Sometimes, if the sock has knots, it can make you feel Like the princess in the story of Princess who slept on the many mattresses under which there was a tiny little pea, sweet pea. And you don't have any explanation for the discomfort you're feeling, but then you find that there's a tiny little knot on the inside of your sock that annoys you. So we want to not have those tiny little knots on the inside of socks. Some of you may want to create them for yourselves, but if you're gifting a pair of socks, it's probably nicer to avoid the knots on the inside. If you're gifting the pair of socks, you may consider washing them first and felting in these knots with your hands. Again, I'm just going over the stitches. The way that they were done is the way that I sew over them. It's like knitting over the stitches that were knit already with my sewing needle. And then remember, weave it all the way in. And because we're using wool, we will be able to felt these in with our first wash with soap and water. And we avoid any knots on the inside of the sock very easily. You can see wool fibers starting to felt a little bit even without soap and water. But you do want to felt it nicely so that you don't get holes in your socks. All right, this is the next one. We thread the tail. Into our sewing needle. And we investigate what happened here. What do we have? There are no gaps. The stitch went this way, and then I can go up here. What I can do here is I can weave instead of knit over. And follow the same path that I followed, carrying the gray yarn over and over. Then I like to come back. Again, avoiding knots, but weaving things in neatly, hiding the tail so it can be felted in smooth and flat. Let's investigate further. Here is I have only two more. Here is the white one. Okay, let's thread this into the needle. Put my hand back inside. Investigate the path of this white yarn. When you pull a little bit, you see here's that stitch. You see how it's moving when I pull? Okay, so my next step would be to go here. Gonna follow the path of this white yarn. You can stretch your work with your fingers by pushing a little bit from the inside, and it will reveal to you the path of the stitches, so you can neatly and carefully follow the path. Sometimes you're not going to have enough yarn to follow the path fully. If that happens, you will want to cut off a piece and extend, but hopefully while you're knitting, you remind yourself to not cut things too short so that you have plenty of length for this finishing step. Okay, I made my way a little bit away and then back, and now I'm ready to cut it off and felt it in flat with soap and water at my first wash. And this is also another reason why you may want to wash the pair of socks before gifting it to someone. That way you don't have to worry about them getting holes in their socks. This is the last one, the last tail. Here we go. I go back here, and this will only be like the cuff, sewing over the stitches that were knitted and following their path. You can push with your finger from the bottom to reveal the path for yourself a little more clearly and follow it. Okay, come to the middle, and then you want to weave back to the beginning. And cut it off. This will be another one where you will use soap and water at your first wash to felt it all down and flat. Turn it inside out, and your socks are ready for wearing, washing, gifting. You need to do the second one as well, of course. All right, so I also want to show you how you can use your fingers to quickly knit a little piece of ribbon. You might want to fold your socks like this for gifting. You can use the two colors from your design. You can make a little knot. Now you can use your fingers to finger knit like this, very quickly. Little cord that you can use as a ribbon. To put a nice little bow on your folded socks before you gift them to someone or to yourself. Almost have enough, a little more. Of course, you can use different colors. I like to use the yarn that I used for knitting. But you can get creative here. You can make a super long cord, super long ribbon, super short. You can wrap it with paper first, or you can neatly fold your socks like this. Make a little bow. And put them in a gift bag and surprise someone this winter. Or you can put the bow on this side, on the gray toes. Put them in a box or a bag, and your socks are ready to be a little warm surprise for someone you love.